All right, we got some examples of contract types. Well, we saw these, and now we're gonna go through examples. We got an express contract. This is a situation where Jane is gonna hire a photographer, Mike, to take pictures at her wedding. They both sign a written agreement stating the date, time, location, services provided, and the payment terms. This is an express contract because the terms and conditions are explicitly stated in the written agreement. Pretty straightforward. I like it. Next up, an implied in fact contract. Sarah goes to a hair salon and sits in the stylist's chair, asking for a haircut. The stylist proceeds to cut Sarah's hair without discussing specific terms or conditions. Now, obviously, they're probably going to ask, hey, how short do you want your hair? But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about payment, saying, hey, you're going to have to pay. It's kind of inferred that Sarah's going to have to pay at the end of this. Now, after the haircut, Sarah pays the stylist. This is an implied in fact contract because the terms and conditions are inferred from the party's conduct, even though they did not expressly state them. If you walk in to a hair salon, sit down in a chair, it's pretty clear that you're there for a haircut and you know you're going to have to pay. Unless you just fill up the turnip truck or you're an alien first day on the planet, that would just be inherently understood. Next up, implied in law, known as a quasi-contract. Peter mistakenly receives a shipment of expensive electronics intended for his neighbor. All right, interesting situation. Hopefully Peter just gives them to his neighbor, but let's see. Peter does not return the electronics or pay for them. All right, Peter, I see how we're treating this here. In this case, a court may impose a quasi-contract requiring Peter to pay for the electronics or return them, even though there was no actual contract between Peter and the electronics supplier. Great examples here of a question, multiple choice, sim, or a sim would just be essentially a bunch of multiple choice questions put together for this, where you have to identify, is this a valid contract? What would be remedies? Who would be forced to do what based on the court's situations such as those. Next up, we've got a unilateral contract. Linda offers a $200 reward for anyone who finds and returns her lost dog. Hopefully that happens. Poor Linda, poor dog. This is a unilateral contract because Linda promises to pay the reward only if someone performs the requested act, which is returning the dog. Now, when someone returns the dog, the contract is formed and Linda is obligated to pay the reward. That's a unilateral. Next, we have bilateral. Tom agrees to sell his car to Susan for $5,000, and Susan agrees to pay Tom $5,000 for the car. This is a bilateral contract because both parties exchange promises. Here, Tom promises to sell the car, and Susan promises to pay for it. Both parties will be obligated to perform their respective promises. All right, not bad. Now, we do notice that some of these contracts can be in both categories. Bilateral can be an express contract. These are just different situations. Again, this is expressly stated. These are just definitions. Make sure you know them. Situations, examples, all that good stuff. Next up, common law contracts versus UCC. We talked about the differences between these. A real estate contract is an example of a common law contract. Suppose that Jane agrees to sell her house to John for $300,000, and they sign a written agreement which outlines the terms of the sale. The contract here will be governed by common law because it does involve real estate. And then lastly, UCC, Electronics Company A agrees to sell 100 laptops to Company B for $50,000. Both parties sign a written agreement outlining the terms of the sale, including payment and delivery details. Now, this contract will be governed by the UCC because it involves the sale of goods, which in this case are the laptops. Nothing too crazy, nothing too wild, nothing you can't handle. You got this. Let's keep going through. All right, couple other situations. We'll run through quasi-contracts on unjust enrichment and public policy. Now, a quasi-contract, also known as a contract implied in law, it's not an actual contract, but rather a legal substitute for a contract that is formed to impose equity. Now, equality versus equity, the difference there, equality is giving everyone $10, but equity would giving people enough money so that they both have the same balance in their bank account. So that is the difference. Not that that's important for the exam, but I just remember something, learned that in school. So equity versus equality. It's a construct of the courts designed to prevent unjust enrichment, which occurs when one person is unfairly benefited at the expense of another. And let's live in a nice, fair world, if there ever would be such one. Oh, we can dream, can't we? Now, the court imposes a quasi-contract when there's no existing formal contract between the parties involved, and a situation arises where one party possesses something of value that, in fairness and justice, should belong to the other party. That's why we have judges, we have arbitrators. They are going to help make sure that no one is unjustly enriched. Let's consider an example here. We've got person A, they're a homeowner, they're out of town, and person B is a landscaper, and the landscaper mistakenly trims A's lawn, believing it belongs to person C, who actually contracted B's services. So this is a whole big mess. Even though there's no contract between A and B, A has been enriched by B's actions. They have a well-maintained lawn that they did not pay for. All right, so a little bit of a mess, a little bit of a mistake. Make sure you put details in instructions when you get services done. Now, if B realizes the mistake and asks A to pay for the services, A might refuse, arguing that they never requested the service. In such a case, B can go to court to ask for a quasi-contract to be imposed. The court may rule in B's favor, creating a quasi-contract that requires A to pay B the reasonable value of the service, thereby preventing A from being unjustly enriched by B's mistaken service. Now, here we see this is a simple example, but it is pretty much illustrating the fundamental principles of quasi-contracts. They're imposed by courts, so it's a contract, because we see contracts normally need to be agreed upon by two parties, but in this case, the court's kind of coming in, putting the gavel down, saying, this is your contract now. I know we're just one party, but here's what you have to do. Imposed by the courts to ensure fairness and prevent unjust enrichment when no actual contract exists between the parties. Not bad, not too bad.
Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.